Hello and welcome to our Redeemer Lutheran Church study on the book of Psalms. I'm Pastor Eric Kleinschmidt here with you once again. Today we have two paradoxical psalms, and they're interesting in the way that David interacts with God and how he perceives God interacting with him. So Psalm 39 and Psalm 40 is our text for today. Again, we are using the English Standard Version of the Bible. However, you should be free to use whatever you have at home. Just recognize that some of the words and even some of the versification may not always add up. We are using an online Bible called BibleGateway.com that's completely free. They don't support me or give me any coupons or anything like that. It's just a free service that's out there, and I like to use it because it does have a wide variety of translations available. All right, here's the text, Psalm 39. Right off the bat, it's interesting because we have an addition in the superscription that we don't normally have. David says, to the choir master, particular, Jeduthun, who is sometimes also known as Ethan, a psalm of David. We know that David wrote this, and we know that he is entrusting it to a specific person. And who is this person? To understand who Jeduthun is, we actually have to go to 1 Chronicles 25. So we're going to jump there real quick. In 1 Chronicles 25, David the king is organizing the musicians, all right? And once again, here's a wonderful place if you are expecting a child and are looking for some names that might be a little bit out of the ordinary. There's a lot of interesting names here. Good luck. So David and the chiefs of the service set apart for the service the sons of Asaph and of Heman and Jeduthun. There he is, Jeduthun, right there in the beginning. There are three chiefs that are set apart, and now we're going to find out what they do. They prophesied with lyres, with harps, and with cymbals. Three instruments that are obviously used in worship, at least in David's time, and that these gentlemen are apparently particularly competent at, and that's why they're called on to give their best for the service of God. And they prophesied with lyres. We might say, okay, that's a little bit strange. What does it mean to prophesy with an instrument? Does that mean they play the instrument and they think that the instrument then tells the future? Well, not exactly. Prophecy can be thought of in two different ways. The first is what we normally think of in that someone receives a vision from God or a dream or some other information about what's going to happen in the future. There's a lot of people that claim to get those things. You might think Nostradamus, right? He's always on TV giving these claims about what's going to happen. The difference between the prophecy that happens in the Bible and like other stuff is that what happens in the Bible actually comes true in the way that it's prophesied to come true, and often pretty immediately, although sometimes you have to wait years and decades. But there's often a lot of revelation that happens with the prophecies in the Bible. Jesus fulfills some 300, 400 prophecies about what the Messiah will do and what he will be like and what he will say. He fulfills like hundreds of those from the Old Testament. It's one of the big reasons why former Jews who read the scriptures and then saw Jesus eventually came and said, yes, this is the one we've been waiting for. The scribes, the Pharisees in Jesus' time missed it, and that's part of the reason why Jesus is always butting heads with them, because they should have been the first people to recognize him because of the prophecies of the Old Testament, and they were some of his biggest opponents, okay? So that's prophecy in the sense that it foretells the future, okay? Another way that prophecy is discussed is that it forthtells, F-O-R-T-H, tells. So it tells forth, meaning that it proclaims, that it preaches, that it speaks out, and it praises God, and it tells what God has done and what God is doing and what God will do. But it's not so much concerned with 50 years from now, there will be an army that will invade Syria and they will conquer them. Okay, that's not what this type of prophecy is doing. So these musicians were not expecting, we want to go here. These musicians were not expecting their harps, lyres, and cymbals to tell them what's going to happen in the future. They used them to proclaim worship to God, to proclaim praise to God in the context of worship, in the same way that we do today. And so our instruments, our choirs, our people all do the same thing. One of the things that we will see in here is that they are using the best that they have available. Asaph, Heman, I want to say He-Man because I'm a child of the 80s, and Jeduthun were competent. These probably were the best of the best. All places where we see God structuring worship, in the building of his tabernacle, in the building of the stuff in the tabernacle, and in the temple, God asks for high craftsmanship. He wants the best from these wonderful people that he has created and given them the skills. And so when we come to worship, we also want to offer God our best in our singing, in our attention, in our offerings, in our presentation, everything, in our demeanor when we're here. All right, we want to do the best that we can, not because we're afraid that God won't bless us otherwise. He already has blessed us. We are responding to his greatness and his goodness of being in the presence of the Almighty God. And so we try to give him our best in all things. It's one of the reasons why at church, when we have the offertory, it's where the offering is usually collected, passed around, right? And then people put their offerings in there, and the organist usually plays something. Well, it's called an offertory because traditionally, organists were paid by the piece. So if they played 4 hymns, they got paid for 4 hymns, okay? If they played a prelude, they got paid for that. So all the pieces they got paid for, assuming that they weren't members of the congregation and donating their time because that's their offering to God, okay? Even if they were hired to play the organ for a service, when it got to the offering, that was a piece that they were not paid for because it was considered their offering to God. They were using their skills, their talents, and giving them to God. And so the offertory was often the most complicated, beautiful piece of the whole thing because the organists, the musicians would put everything they had to offer that up to God. And that's one of the reasons why now, even though we don't collect the offering by passing the plates, it's all taken at the door because of COVID, we still enjoy the offertory. We appreciate the skills of someone that God has created. And it's run on a computer now, okay? But that's recorded from a real musician who recorded the instructions down in St. Louis, I think, and puts them into the iPad, and then we plug it in here, and those instructions are transferred to our musical instrument. It's as if he was right there playing, and so we do appreciate that in that sense, and that's why we call it an offertory, and that's why we enjoy it. And here we see that these particular people were given these gifts, and so David is putting them in charge of other people that have the gifts. So these people had to know what they were doing. Asaph, Heman, and Jeduthun were obviously very talented. So the list of those who did the work and their duties was, and here if you're looking for names, the sons of Asaph, Zakur, Joseph, Neaniah, and Ashralah, sons of Asaph, under the direction of Asaph, who prophesied under the direction of the king. Okay? And David was an accomplished musician and lyricist. We see that. And so here David is using his skills to oversee other people with skills who then oversee other people with skills. So there's an order. But it's all about using the skills that God has given in order to enhance worship and to give God our best. Verse 3, of Jeduthun, the sons of Jeduthun, Gedaliah, Zeri, Jeshahiah, and Shimei, Hashabiah, and Mattitiah. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing these correctly. I might if I took some time and looked at them in Hebrew, but oh man. There were 6 of them under the direction of their father Jeduthun, who prophesied with the lyre in thanksgiving and praise to the Lord. So here we're told that Jeduthun is particularly skilled with the lyre. And that may be why here David entrusts this particular psalm to Jeduthun, because David thought in his artistic brain that, hey, Jeduthun, the lyre that he plays, would be great for this, okay? Maybe that's why it is. Or maybe it was written, for some other reason that had a connection to Jeduthun. But I think because it says the choir master, let Jeduthun handle this one, it was probably because David thought it was appropriate for the lyre. There's also another aspect that may explain that, and that, so we have the sons of Heman, all right, what they do, all right. Here we're told all these were sons of Heman, the king's seer. So this man had the ability to also see and foretell the future, again, blessed by God, according to the promise of God to exalt him. That doesn't necessarily mean that he used his symbols to do that. Gong, oh, God says we'll have a good harvest this year. No, it was probably like, gong, the Lord will save his people, something that God has already promised to do. I could be wrong, but that's just my God had given him 14 sons and 3 daughters. God had certainly blessed his family. They were all under the direction of their father in the music of the house of the Lord, with cymbals, harps, lyres, the service of the house of God. It was a whole family that had those skills. And we know families like that, and God blessed them. My paternal grandfather was a big band musician, and he played a dozen or more instruments, all different types of instruments. He had a music room upstairs. I remember as a kid going up there to play on the different instruments, and he was always supportive of that. But I do not have those skills. I do not have the ability, at least that I have not discovered. And I've tried to play different instruments. Even the recorder in like 4th grade was tough. So I just don't have that. But some families are very gifted, and you see that in the families, and it's a wonderful thing to see. So the number of them with their brothers who were trained in singing to the Lord, all who were skillful, was 288. Wow. And here, and they cast lots for their duties, small and great, teacher and pupil alike. So what David does is he says, these are all the people that have these musical skills, and we want them to serve in the temple. We want to have music on a regular basis, so we want to have them serve for a specific set of time. So we might have this family serve for the first third of the year, this family will serve the second, and this family will serve the third, and then we'll start over. And they said, well, who should start off? Well, they cast lots, they drew straws, okay? And so there was no favoritism, because they're just respecting the abilities of all of them. So that may be why David says to Jeduthun, because it was Jeduthun's turn when David wrote this. That's entirely possible too. So we don't know a lot, but it's kind of interesting just to imagine that David is planning worship. That's what he's doing. And for whatever reason, Jeduthun with the lyre was given charge of this particular psalm for worship. All right, let's get into what the psalm actually says. David writes, I said, I will guard my ways that I may not sin with my tongue. I will guard my mouth like a muzzle, so long as the wicked are in my presence. So David is there, and he's saying, man, here's these wicked people doing things that are not right. I want to tell them off. And then he says, no, I'm going to guard my ways so that I don't go too far. And so the term bite your tongue. Okay, that's what David is saying. The Bible speaks a lot about how what we say is dangerous and can be very sinful. That it's like a fire, an all-consuming fire that can't be stopped. Jesus says, blessed are you when others slander you. Jesus assumes that there are going to be people that speak against you. David himself, and many times in the Psalms, talks about how others were telling lies about him and were seeking his ruin through stirring up other people. It, of course, happens to Jesus as the scribes and the Pharisees stir up the people and instigate the people through their words and their accusations and things that were partly true in some cases. Is he a king? Of course Jesus is king, but not in the way that you are presenting it to Pilate or Herod, okay? So anyway, this what we say can have great impact. Much of the New Testament is written about gossip and being busybodies and how dangerous that is to the health of the church and Christians and individuals. Much of the New Testament is written that way because it was a big problem. So that's how we know that that's something that people have continued to wrestle with their entire peace, but to no avail. I did what was righteous, and it still didn't turn out okay. My distress only grew worse. My heart became hot within me, and as I mused, the fire burned. And then I could control it no longer, David says, and I spoke with my tongue. I couldn't be silent anymore, and I said it. What happens? Verse 4, David immediately regrets it. Look how he speaks. O Lord, make me know my end. And what is the measure of my days? Let me know how fleeting I am. I thought it was so important. I thought it was so righteous. Lord, teach me. Humble me, David is saying. Behold, you have made my days a few handbreadths, and my lifetime is as nothing before you. Surely all mankind stands as a mere breath. Selah, again, rest. Contemplate that point, right? All mankind stands as a mere breath. This is a reference to Genesis, because after God forms Adam from the dust of the earth, he is not a living being until God breathes into him the breath of life. And so that breath of life gives life to the dust of Adam. The Hebrew name Adam literally means the dirt man, okay? Ha-Adam, Adamah, it's dirt, he's of the dirt, okay? But it's the breath that gives him life. When God makes Eve, he does not breathe into Eve to make her alive. Rather, she has the breath of life taken from the cells, the side of Adam, so she already has it. When Cain and Abel are born, they do not have to be breathed into by God in order to have life. They already have it from the cells of their mother and father, who passed it on to them, all the way down to you and me, okay? And so we have the breath of life in us, and when we stop breathing, the life stops. So we are but a mere breath, but God will raise up the slain. You remember the valley of dry bones, that they stand on their feet, but there was no life in them until he prophesies to the breath, and the breath of God comes into them, and they stood up a great and exceeding army. So again, we are breath of God in that way. Rest, contemplate that, and think next time you speak, is what David is saying here in verse 5. He continues, surely a man goes about as a shadow. Surely for nothing they are in turmoil. Man heaps up wealth and does not know who will gather. Who's going to inherit all your stuff? You say, oh, my kids, I'm leaving it to them. Are you sure? What if they say, I'm not even come back? I helped clean out a house once where the son, the only surviving heir, was a couple states away. And he came back and just looted the place, took all the valuables, all the jewelry, all the money, and then asked the neighbors, who had been friends with his parents for forever, to clean it out or to help. Or I think he was calling a service to come in and just haul it all off to donations, and if there was anything that we wanted that we should have as a remembrance. And there were pictures in there, family pictures and trips. It was just really, really sad. So all of that stuff, all the stuff that we cherish, we think we're leaving it to people. They may not want it, and it goes in the trash. Our materialism, we don't take with us, and who we think will value it, they might not. And now, O Lord, for what do I wait? My hope is in you. He's saying there's a better way than heaping up wealth. It's trusting and waiting on the Lord. Deliver me from all my transgressions. Do not make me the scorn of the fool. David's saying, protect my reputation. I've spoke out against these people, and it just got worse. So, Lord, I have to wait for you to do it. I'm going to be mute. I'm mute. I do not open my mouth. for it is you who have done it. Remove your stroke from me. I am spent by the hostility of your hand. Notice how he makes a request that God would deliver him, and then in the same breath accuses God of doing this to him. And that's difficult to understand. But we have to remember that although God does not cause evil to befall us, he does not afflict us, he allows it to happen. He allows the devil and our own sinful flesh to sometimes get the better of us. So you could say that's tantamount to God doing it. And that's what David is saying. Why does God allow that? Well, go to the New Testament. That he disciplines you, that he allows you to be tested, that he teaches you through that. It's often in the tough times that we finally forsake all the futile things and we look towards that which is important. COVID is teaching us that. What's truly important? All these things that we busied ourselves. Do you need football to live? Should you be spending more time with your family? Were you working too much? Did you need to be going to all those meetings? Maybe it's you need to be in your backyard with your kids floating in your pool. Maybe that's what God is trying to teach you. All that's possible. But we often learn best when we're struggling, and God knows that. And so he allows things to befall us. So is that him causing them? No. But is he responsible? In a way. And that's what David is saying. And living with a God like that is difficult. And yet, it's also positive because we know that in the end, God promises that he works for the good of those who love him. Okay? Let's see. Remove your stroke from me. I am spent by the hostility of your hand. When you discipline man who rebukes for sin, you consume like a moth that is dear to him. Surely all mankind is a mere breath. Again, there's that repetition, that importance, a mere breath. Discipline, again, for our good. Hear my prayer, O Lord, and give ear to my cry. Hold not your peace at my tears. We can hear this in worship. I am a sojourner with you. I'm traveling with you, a guest like all my fathers. That you care about me as somebody that is not exactly like you, but is welcome. And so take care of me. There's a lot in the Old Testament about how you have to treat sojourners, and you have to treat them pretty good. And so we see that even in Middle East cultures today, this acceptance of people that are traveling through, and you offer better than you would give family members that showed up at your doorstep. Look away from me that I may smile again before I depart and am no more. Again, there's an accusation that God is doing this, but also the realization that God will save him. Otherwise, why ask him to save you? So here's that paradox of a God who allows bad things to happen and yet also cares for us greatly, that he does not afflict but allows us to be afflicted. And how we live with that is difficult. And it's sometimes we hate it and we get angry with God. David gets angry with God. That's okay. God can take it. But he sits there like a father who says, I know this is tough now, but trust me, it's going to be better for you in the future. Just keep going, okay? We're going to take a break, move to the other psalm, make sure that all recorded, and I got to plug in my computer before it goes dark here. So I will see you on the other side. Welcome back. We're charging and ready to go for Psalm 40. This is an interesting psalm because it is out of place, as best as we can tell, in the greater chronology of the Psalms. And again, the Psalms are not chronological in order. They're thematic in some places. Sometimes they're put together because they have similar language or similar themes. Sometimes maybe they are chronological and we don't know it. But our best guess for Psalm 40 here is that this is a psalm that is from David's early career. when he's fleeing from Saul. So we've had Psalms where David has been looking back on his life already, and now we come to Psalm 40, and it's like we're jumping way back to where he was when he first was fleeing from Saul. And we say, well, why did Ezra, who might have assembled the Psalms in this order, or other faithful people put this one here? I think it might be thematic. It sort of goes along with Psalm 39, talks about the same paradox of God afflicting and yet God saving. And so they kind of have a similar theme to them. So maybe that's it. Maybe it's not. I don't know. Maybe they threw a dart and put it. I have no idea. Here's what we have. To the choir master. So again, we know this was meant to be used in worship. And it's from David, a psalm of David. All right. There's no indication that this is meant for Jebuthun or any of the others, but we do know that it's from David and it was used in worship. I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me and heard my cry. Okay, the wording here is in the past tense, so David is rejoicing over an answered prayer already. He drew me up from the pit of destruction, out of the miry bog, and he set my feet upon a rock, making my steps secure. We've heard this language before. It was in earlier Psalms. You can go back through the study and find those where David uses this language of being set upon a rock, of being pulled out of the pit or the cistern. It all speaks to God's deliverance. And so this is one of the reasons why we think this was earlier, is because it contains some of the same language that David was using at an earlier time in his psalm writing career. So it is kind of neat that way. But we put it here at Psalm 40. We could, some may say, well, 40 is an important number in the Bible. It's the number of deliverance. It's the number of purification. It's the number of getting right with God, of restoration. Noah was in the ark 40 days, 40 nights, right? Okay, so we have all of that. But again, these Psalms weren't numbered in this way. You may have a Bible that this is actually Psalm 41 or Psalm 39 because it follows the Septuagint instead of the Hebrew or something else. So we really can't place any importance on this being Psalm number 40. At least I can't. Maybe you can. So anyway, he put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to our God. Many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. Here's something interesting. David, okay, the songwriter, is saying, God gave me a new song. He did something so awesome that I needed to compose something brand new for him and to sing his praise. Here's interesting. Many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. It is often through the witness of our life that people will hear the gospel. So we think of evangelism as you knocking on somebody's door and saying, hi, my name is Eric, and I'm a Christian. Would you like to know about Jesus Christ too? I've done that. And most people were very polite, but you definitely did get some door slams in your face and no, thank you, that sort of thing. And we think that's evangelism, right? Maybe in 1963, there's a lot of studies on this, and a lot of them blame air conditioning, honestly, as strange as that sounds. So before air conditioning, people in communities in the summer would sit out on their porch in the cool of the day to get the breeze, right? Because it was too hot in the house. So you sit out on the porch, and if you're on the porch, and your neighbors are on the porch, and their neighbors are on the porch, and the people across the street are on the porch, what do people do? Well, they wave. Maybe they walk across the street and say, hey, how's it going? Or I see you're building a new garage, Oh, yeah. You still working over at Inland Steel? Oh, yeah, well, I got laid off, but I hope to get back to work. Oh, okay, yeah. Can I borrow a cup of sugar, right? That's the stereotypical thing. That happened and because the people were out there, so people knew their neighbors, they knew what was going on in their neighborhood, right? Well, now you have air conditioning, so it's cooler inside than it is outside. So people don't sit on their porch. They stay inside. So now you see your neighbors less. So you talk to your neighbors less. And now you don't know your neighbors as well. You don't know your neighborhood as well. How many of us today really have zero interaction with people that live 2 doors down? I mean, maybe your neighbors, your ball goes over the fence sometime, but that's about all you get. But so anyway, that's one of the studies that happened, and they blame air conditioning. It's a really kind of interesting theory. But because of that, people became very private about their homes, that our home is where we can be ourselves and we don't have to be presentable to the world. And so intrusions upon that, phone calls, dropping by unannounced, really became inappropriate in a lot of people's worlds. So before, when it was common that people would see your door open and knock because they were there out on their porch and they know you're home, and okay. But now that everything is insular, and so it's not as acceptable today to intrude on that. In some places of the United States it's still fine. It's still that old way. But in urban areas, when people are home, they want to be home, and they don't want to be intruded on. And it's one of the reasons why everybody hates telemarketers and why people don't like you coming to their door. I mean, we have doorbells now that we can see that you're there, and we don't even have to talk to you. Or we can talk to you like, not interested. It's just the way things are changing, and there's been many changes. So anyway, that's not necessarily evangelism. It can be. But more often, evangelism happens from you getting to know people, them looking at you and seeing that your life is different, and then saying, hey, that makes sense, or I wish my family was like that. Why is your family that way? Or your house burned down, and you're not freaking out, and you're talking about God will provide for you. Like, how can you do that? And you're so weird. And then they go home and they think about it. It's like, wow, imagine if I had that kind of trust and that kind of hope. And I wonder how they, maybe there's something to going to church. Maybe there's something to believe, Or this person that I know as my neighbor is not a crazy person, and they believe that this guy rose from the dead 2,000 years ago. Okay. I know he's not crazy, and he's not a weirdo Christian knocking on my door trying to tell me about his faith and invite me to church. Or, don't want that. Maybe there's something to this. And then the Spirit directs you and builds that relationship, and then over time, maybe it is the right time to say, would you like to come to church with me this Sunday? Hey, it's Christmas. Why don't you come to church with me? I will walk you through the service. We're having communion, but you can't participate in that for reasons I'd love to explain to you sometime, but we'd love to have you come and sit with us and receive a blessing and sing and hold candles. And maybe they say no. Maybe they say no for 10 years. Maybe the 11th year is the year maybe the 40th year is the one that anyway. So here we're seeing David talk about something that we see also in our world. Oh, nope, we gotta go. Where did it go? I have lost our Bible study text. It's disappeared. Oh no. Oh. Let's see if we can bring it back. Okay, we're back, and hopefully this works this time. Sorry for the delay. The Bible page just went away, and then when I got it back, it was all in Spanish, and I had to stop and reboot everything. So hopefully we're continuing. Let's see if this works. There we are. All right. We've left off verse 3. Many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. We were talking about evangelism, how it's not always just face-to-face. It's often people see the Christian life and say, hey, there's something to that. tell me why you're different than everybody else. Tell me why you're so weird. And you say, well, Jesus, okay? And the weirdness spreads in that way. But then you see the wisdom in it too. And you're not afraid of being weird in the world that is absolutely upside down. So anyway, verse 4, let's continue on. Blessed is the man who makes the Lord his trust, who does not turn to the proud, to those who go astray after a lie. Again, God is showing us the truth. The world is full of lies and leading us down the wrong path. So we put the trust in the Lord. You have multiplied, O Lord my God, your wondrous deeds and your thoughts toward us. None can compare with you. I will proclaim and tell of them, yet they are more than can be told. David is saying, you've given me a new song, but still the new song isn't even enough to proclaim your glories, O Lord. In sacrifice and offering you have not delighted. God actually says this in many places, that I don't actually need your sacrifices. I don't need bulls and rams burnt on the altar. We might wonder, okay, then God, well, why are you having them do that? There's a reason. We'll get to that. You have given me an open ear. It actually says ears you have dug like a shovel, right? Again, Genesis, God made our ears out of the dust of the ground. And so kind of interesting Hebrew idiom there. You have given me ears you've dug. So it's talking about a connection to us, that God is listening to us and cares for us. Burnt offering and sin offering you have not required. Again, God speaks this way in many places, and we say, okay, if God doesn't want these things, why does he command Israel to do them? Because they were pointing ahead to something that God does care about, and that's the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. It's all about Jesus. All the sacrifices in the Old Testament, the rams and the bulls and the birds and the grain and the wine, all of that being poured out on the altar is a foreshadowing and a foretelling and a forthtelling of what God will do finally to deliver all his people, and that is to have Jesus do those things on the cross, okay? So he doesn't care about this bull being, today was really going bad, and then somebody sacrificed a bull, and now we got barbecue. Woohoo! That's not God. He's saying, I don't care about that bull. I only care that you understand that Jesus is coming, and that Jesus will be the final sacrifice. That's all God cares about. Okay? So when David says he doesn't delight in the blood being shed, it doesn't make him happy. It's all about the trust in the deliverer that is to come. Okay? Verse 7. Then I said, behold, I have come. In the scroll of the book it is written of me. This is a real strange part of the Hebrew. In the scroll of the book it is written of me. You've carried me in your scroll. The best we can come up with is that he might be referring to like the book of life, that our names are written with God, and he's keeping careful account of our life, that he doesn't want to lose us. And so he writes us down in his book. He inscribes us. And so David is saying, I'm written in your book of life, and I delight to do your will, and your law is written in my heart. We are connected through writing, through the scriptures. I have told the glad news of deliverance in the great congregation. So I have been there in the temple and amongst your faithful, and I sing out. I have not restrained my lips, as you know, O Lord. This is kind of an interesting thing for us here in COVID land. I have not restrained my lips. Some pastors have used this to defy government orders for masking, or at least in places where it's been made illegal to sing or to chant without a mask, or to do it at all. And so I've heard this from some places, that the Bible says, I have not restrained my lips. Again, I don't know that you can take this as being prescriptive for what you should do. I don't know. Thankfully, I'm not in that situation. Our government here hasn't made any sort of mandate in that way. As long as we can maintain social distancing, masks are not necessary in worship, according to the government in our area. But in some places, it is more restrictive, and there are some places, not just Lutheran, but a lot of churches that we're fighting against that. And David says, I have not restrained my lips from telling the glad news of deliverance in the great congregation. Public worship, unhindered. It might be a little bit of a stretch, but I understand that we don't want our freedom to worship, and singing is a part of that. We don't want that freedom to be infringed upon. I can understand that, but how you go about it, man, you got to use your own conscience in that case. Anyway, verse 10, I have not hidden your deliverance within my heart. This little light of mine, right? Hide it under a bushel. No, right? We all know that song. David is kind of singing this little light of mine here. I have spoken of your faithfulness, your salvation. I have not concealed your steadfast love and your faithfulness from the great congregation. As for you, so David has been talking about what he has done, although it's only in response to what God has done. Now he's saying, as for you, Lord, you will not restrain your mercy from me. Wow. Your steadfast love and your faithfulness will ever preserve me. The great trust in God and great expectation from God. David once again returns to his problems. Evils have encompassed me beyond number. My iniquities. So David is saying, I'm not innocent in this. I realize that some of this is my own doing, have overtaken me. I cannot see. They are more than the hairs of my head. My heart fails me. I don't know what to do anymore, God. It's so overwhelming. Again, David needs therapy. He does. He is a picture of somebody that's struggling with their mental health. And maybe writing psalms and composing them is part of how David practiced self-care. He didn't have a therapy office to go to and talk to somebody trained, so he talks to God, and maybe this is David working out his depression. That's kind of interesting to think about. Be pleased, O Lord, to deliver me. O Lord, make haste to help me. Okay, that's in our liturgy, Matins. Make haste to help me, O Lord. Let those be put to shame and disappoint altogether who seek to snatch away my life. Let those be turned back and brought to dishonor who delight in my hurt. Let those be appalled because of their shame who say to me, aha, 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 we got you now. We're going to tell everybody about the bad thing that you did. They delight in my hurt. And David is saying, Lord, you need to take care of this. And he waits. And that waiting can be difficult when you're being slandered and people are telling lies about you, or half-truths, or completely made-up stuff, or stuff that you did do and you regret, because David is not above that. Obviously, his sins are recorded for us. Thank God ours aren't in a book for everybody to read. But David is saying, I trust in you, O Lord. May all who seek you rejoice and be glad in you. May those who love your salvation say continually, great is the Lord. As for me, I am poor and needy, but the Lord takes thought for me. He hasn't forgotten me. David is telling him what he needs to remember. So he already knows this, but he needs to hear it again, and he needs to hear it from himself in this case. You are my help and my deliverer. Do not delay, oh my God. That's how he ends. Like, okay, yes, I know this is true. I know it's true, but God, come quickly. You need to solve this fast because I'm wearing out. Okay. Interesting to think of David working out his own mental health through the writing of his Psalms, but that may be an entire possibility. And again, there's a real person behind these words, not just David. We use David's skills, David's words, David's abilities to rhyme and make poetry in Hebrew, of course. And also, we do not have the benefit to hear him play an instrument along with that. Maybe that's what we can do in heaven. We'll listen to David sing his Psalms and play at the same time. David concert. I think that'd be kind of cool. But there's not only David's personality in here, there's also God's personality, because God is directing David through all of this. So the more that we read Scripture, the more we get to know God on a personal level. And I said in Bible class on Sunday that Jesus was kind of a dork, and I hope that I don't get struck down for that. When you read, especially in Greek, some of the things that Jesus says, particularly when he's dealing with his disciples, Jesus makes jokes and puns on people's names, and some of them are really, really kind of lame. I'm sorry, Lord, but they're like dad jokes. And you read them and you're like, oh man, you can just hear the disciples groaning in the background. So there's a humor to our Lord. We see that in how life goes through, but it's a beautiful, glorious, good humor. And so we see God's personality more and more the more that we read the scriptures. So we know God and God knows us through the writings of the scriptures. It's one of the big reasons that Bible study is so awesome. Thank you for joining me. I really do appreciate you watching and sharing this with friends and putting up with the technical difficulties. Say, oh yeah, just do it online. Well, man, sometimes it can be rough. So hopefully this didn't turn you off. Please like and subscribe. I'll post the link to last week's study up above if you'd like to backtrack or if you missed it. And God bless you all and take care, and I will see you next week.